Hello and welcome back. I'm really excited because today I'm going to share some of the biggest lessons or takeaways from 2022. I'm really excited because I feel like this year was one of those years where a lot of things were just like illuminated. Like there was no avoiding it. And it were things that I probably knew. Like if I sat down and really was kind of just like curious and digging around with what I believed, these are probably things that like I knew at my core, but it was like I had to experience this lesson in a new way in order to understand a different perspective of it. So I'm really excited to share what came through this year and how I experienced it and what the big takeaway was, because I feel like it's things that we all can use and learn from. And yeah, so we're going to jump right in. The first thing, I really have no order to this because I just did it based off of like what came up, what felt prominent, what really stood out to me. And I kind of looked at the year like chronologically, but again, some of this stuff it's random. Okay. The first thing is about money and how money is really energy, and like anything else energy, it wants to support what it is attracted to, like what is calling it in, what is pulling it, and what is similar frequencies. So learning about money and just the frequency that it holds, and when you set yourself at that same frequency, like it really is there to support us. And one of the biggest tips that I really focused on was personifying money and looking at how I treated money, what I thought about money, how I interacted with money, and then thought about, okay, what would that be? What would that feel like if money was a person? Like, I want money to show up for me, but I might avoid it. I might quickly get rid of it on things that maybe I don't even want or need. So there's all these things that I was kind of, yeah, it was illuminated to look into this part of my life, specifically money. For me, it was this time last year, the end of 2021, when I committed to a coaching program that was a big investment for me. It was something that was definitely out of my comfort zone. And it was one of those things where I knew it was so aligned that the money, like the money was there. Like there was no question. I was like, I know the money's going to be there. And it was like, it was not like nothing bad happened out of it. Um, but it was definitely like an ongoing lesson. It was like this call to pay attention to money, to work on my relationship with money. So, biggest takeaway around finances and just kind of like money mindset this year is like how much money wants to support us, and personifying money and like treating money like your best friend is really one way to break through a lot of these habits that actually repel and kind of keep money away from us. So, lots to say about money, but I'm not going to go into all the details. But that was like the big aha, like, how are you treating money? What's your relationship with money? And is the respect there, or is there like this co-creation? Because money wants to co-create with us. Like money's here to support us and help us do the things that we want to do, help us bring the changes and bring the things to earth that we're meant to. And money is like one of the best resources to do that, especially here on the physical plane. So big, big money lessons this year. Started off the year with big money lessons and ending the year. Okay. The second thing, I think there's about 12, but the second thing I have is doing anything from the energy of proving yourself is not self-love. And this might seem kind of obvious. I don't know. This might seem obvious, this might not. But when we're in the energy of proving ourselves, when we feel like I'm going to do this to justify something, to show somebody other than myself something, right? Like that proving energy. The reason why this is a lower frequency is because self-love, unconditional self-love, is from a space that you are enough. Like there's nothing that needs to change or be proved or anything like that, right? Like you are enough. And so when you are in that proving energy, you really want to ask yourself, well, like what am I trying to prove and to who? And why is this important to me? And how can I shift that perspective to really empower myself and say, there's nothing to prove. So is this coming from a place of fear or love? And is there something else that I can, like, is there another way to achieve what I'm trying to accomplish? Like, whatever it is. So this lesson came out for me really just, I think the biggest area is probably parenting. There was a lot of me feeling like I have to show certain things and do certain things to kind of like justify, right? To like prove certain things. And I'm being vague for a reason, but I am a foster parent and I'm an adoptive parent, but also a foster parent. And a lot of things come up that just like it need to be talked out, and it needs to be really just like an open conversation. But when you're part of a system, there's a lot of questions that go back and forth. There's a lot of people that have different people's interests in mind that are part of every conversation. So it was like every time I came to the table, am I speaking to prove something? Am I speaking just to like, is it something that really needs to be shared? Is it going to benefit the conversation? And what is the intention behind it? Like it was a huge lesson for me. Mainly just like in communication skills, like huge communication skills, but it came up a lot with parenting and advocating for the kids, advocating for mine and Amy's needs as well. And yeah, this was like a huge thing. And also like the things we commit to, right? This is like big picture, like bigger picture than just the communication piece for me. But if you're doing something to prove yourself, like it's really a question of self-worth. And you know, that's a big conditioned thing. Like we're all conditioned to like kind of check these boxes and do certain things to prove like, hey, I hit this milestone or I did this. Like it's a common thing. And like we measure things by like hitting these milestones and showing like where we need to be. So on one end, it's very valuable to like see where people are at, but at the other end, it's like, are we doing these things to prove ourselves, or are we doing these things really because that's what we desire to do? And there's a huge difference in that frequency. And so why this matters and how this came up for me is like things can flow so much smoother and like, I don't even want to say faster, but it can feel like, okay, there's like this sense of ease when there's not that proving energy. And you're just coming from this place of this is what I desire. And I'm doing it for myself, right? Like it's just a matter of slowing down, I think, because of course we all, like when I say this, I'm like, oh, this sounds, of course you want to do things for yourself, right? But it's like slowing down, taking that time to really reflect, like, who am I doing this for? And like, what is my intention behind it? Okay. Third thing. I mentioned this a minute ago, but choosing between love and fear. This to me was like just highlighted. There was a few times during the year where I couldn't make a decision without seeing the contrast of love and fear, like the two choices. I mean, there was always more than two choices, but like there was either choosing from love or choosing from fear. And it was a blessing to see this. It came through emotionally, and it was so intense to see, but it was like I had to see the duality and I had to see the contrast of like simple decisions, big decisions, right? Like there's so much going into every little piece of our day that it brought me back to like this knowing of how much I am a creator, like how much I'm creating what's happening for me because I'm making all these decisions and seeing the root of it. Like you can see the root of all your decisions, and then you can see like how that's reflected into your reality. So what are you doing from love and what are you doing out of fear? And this is about having an honest conversation with yourself, for one, because it's not always easy or apparent, obvious, to see, oh, this is actually from a place of fear. Like there's some things where it's almost masked by this sense of love, but it doesn't come from a place of love because it's lacking the self-love part and there's this fear underneath it. And so this came up for me definitely through just like things that I was committing my energy to, my schedule and routine, and setting boundaries and asking for support was a huge thing. I was afraid of like asking for help and asking for support, like fear of the conversation, of the reaction, of the answer, right? And really shifting that and saying like, I'm not, like, me not asking for support is one way I'm not showing myself love, right? So like I am worthy of receiving support, but knowing like a part of that is asking for help. And so really identifying like, okay, this is a place where I'm just like settling into this fear. And so what this looked like was, once I kind of moved past that and said, look, I have this fear of asking for support. Maybe there's some history there. Like for me, there was some history of being turned down. And so I just thought like people weren't available to support me. Like I didn't trust that the support was available. And so this looked a lot like asking for support in all forms, honestly, but having those conversations. And so kind of settling in, like just knowing that fear is there, but I'm going to choose love because I know I could use the support and I'm worthy of the support. And so when I did this, like it was almost like this energy like unlocked because I did receive support. So not only did I like receive, energy space because I opened up to support and that relieved some things, but it just felt like, okay, like this fear of being turned down, this fear of like rejection is there, but there's like this knowing that like I can still do what I need to do to love myself, even though there's that fear there. So it was like I needed to experience that contrast and know like we can still choose and we can still create what we want to do regardless. But coming back to that question is like a huge game changer. Like, am I doing this from love or am I doing this from fear? That led me like most of the year. Because yeah, it came in like a couple weeks at a time. I would say like over the year, there was like 5 times, 4 to 5 times. Because there was a couple times in the beginning where it was just like a couple days, but it was just like, it was so like every decision I made that like involved other people. It was really like this emotional decision, even though it wasn't really an emotionally charged decision. It wasn't like a big deal or anything. It felt very emotional and it was to see the contrast. So it was very cool, very illuminating, right? Like these things that just like obvious. This is why my number one thing of like using your intuition, making these big decisions is like pay attention because you are so divinely guided. Because I had to tune into that like contrast and that duality of love and fear. It's like that's my way of being now, of like kind of feeling into like where's the fear, where's the love, and letting that kind of guide my intuition. Okay, we're moving on. This next one, it's huge because I don't know, like this conversation came up a lot for me. A lot of my close friends started talking about different things. and their psychic senses. So a big thing that I knew, of course, but I was really encouraged to communicate and share this year is that we are all intuitive. All of us have intuitive gifts. All of us are psychic. We all have these gifts and abilities. We could all turn on different psychic senses in our own way, right? Everyone's different, of course. So it's going to come through differently. The intention is going to make a huge difference on what comes through. Somebody with ill intentions are probably not going to hear their psychic senses or intuition. Oftentimes, we're conditioned to turn up these other voices or other sources of information a little bit louder than our intuition. So we don't think about being intuitive. We don't think about being psychic. We don't think about these abilities because they're clouded. So really sharing that this year was, I feel like, a big part of my mission, honestly, with the podcast, the Intuition Playground, and just some of the conversations I've had, some of the master classes I taught, and yeah, like it was all centered around like empowering people to trust themselves, which is empowering people to find that voice that is unique and theirs and intuitive and guided, right? Yeah, that was a good one because the more we are tuned into our intuition, our psychic senses, whatever you want to say, the more you are committed to your truth and the more you are on your divine path. And that's what we need, whatever your path may look like, right? So, okay. This, again, I had so much learning around relationships. Of course, we were in a 6-year. I just am remembering that 6-year in numerology, universal 6-year. I was in a personal year 2. So tons of things around relationships. Like that's how things were illuminated for me. And one of the big things was we are here to experience different versions of ourselves. Like the human experience is about the different versions of ourselves through energy. And this looks like when you're in different environments around different people and different social settings, observe the version of you in that setting. How is it different than a different version of you when you're around different people? This is where like the juice is at. This is where like you get to experience other people through different versions of yourself. And this came up through so many ways. And really that duality and that contrast was highlighted in this too, because it really like called me to look at relationships that don't feel easy, right? Relationships that seem like I need to run away. And some relationships are that way, like, right? Some relationships are complete. Some relationships need to end because maybe there's some ill intentions there. And this was like requiring me to look at just the discomfort in relationships. And so how can we take that experience of discomfort, of that version of ourselves when we're around certain people or in certain places, and transmute it into knowledge? What is this teaching me? What is this showing me? Really leaning into, okay, I'm going to take this experience as observing a version of myself, and what can I learn from it? I'll tell you, that will bring so much knowledge. Like that will just like start journaling about it. It will bring out a lot. You'll observe a lot about yourself. It really allows you to put yourself in this kind of like passenger role where you're just like viewing yourself. It's like this zoomed out version. And that has really helped. This kind of leads into the next thing, but it really has helped me heal my relationships. Because when I think about how, okay, I am just a different version of myself, depending on who I'm around, where I'm at, also like hormonally, like what's going on with me. When I focus so much on like, okay, this is my perspective, and I've had all these different perspectives, which can create emotions, which, like has memories. And so when I think about that for myself, I can then look at the person across from me and say they are doing the same thing. They're here experiencing all these different versions of themselves. And I might get a different version today than I did the other day, but this is a new experience. I don't really know like what instigated this perspective, but I know it was like a switch. It was like, it might have been a dream, because it felt like one day I woke up and I was like, look at myself reacting emotional, like having emotional reactions, reacting, responding in these different versions of myself. It was almost like I was observing myself from like the passenger side. And so it's really cool. It's almost like meditating. Like it's almost like this meditation feeling, but kind of sit with that perspective. Even if you spend like 5 minutes a day thinking about that, like imagining like, oh yeah, like this is the version of myself when I'm, with my partner or with my kids or with my whole family or when I'm at work, you can like tap into all those versions of yourself. And the big thing is like coming at this from a place of love. There's no judgment. You're those different versions of of all those versions of yourself for a reason, right? You have all those relationships in your life for a reason. So, yeah, goes into my next point, is where like these relationships that we have are really a blessing to experience these different versions of ourselves, but you also get to see the world through a different lens, just because you get to see and observe how they're expressing themselves, how they're different versions of themselves. Every interaction is just a way of a possible new perspective. And it's really healing when you can look at it from a place of love, because that roots yourself in self-love, but also love and acceptance for others. I guess like these all like kind of lumped together, because the next thing I have is self-love and self-acceptance leads to the love and acceptance of others. Okay, so this has probably been like a multi-year lesson that has come up over and over and over for me, because the more I am honoring myself and honoring what I need and tuning into me, the more I can like be grounded in love and compassion for others. And I was thinking this was very personal, like for me, but I'm like, no, I see this in other people too, where, right, like everything's a mirror. So like if they are giving off like different energy frequencies that might be lower, it could be anything. It could be like judgment, it could be just bitterness, right? So if they're giving that off, then what is that showing you about how you're receiving it? And how is that a reflection of how they feel about themselves? So there's like the duality of the mirror too, because it's showing you based off of how you receive it or respond to it, but it's also a reflection of what their inner world is showing. And so when you can come at it from a place of like understanding, like, oh, like this interaction, this relationship is experienced in this way, like, what is that saying? There's this understanding and there's this acceptance of, okay, there's the different dynamics of how I'm receiving and responding to it, but there's also what they're reflecting about themselves. I always think like human design is my favorite tool, probably in the whole world. I love human design, and it really helps you see like the layout and how energy can flow. I have a chart right here, and like you can see on paper how the energy kind of operates. And even though there's energy beyond what's shown in human design, but you get this understanding of how things flow and operate. You get this understanding and acceptance about yourself, and then you can understand and accept others for their way of being and way of showing up and way of experiencing their life here. Right? Like we're all here. Like it would be silly for us to all experience and respond and react in the same way. Releasing that expectation that others are like me. Like that was a big thing this year too. I didn't put that on my list, but like releasing that expectation that others are going to respond and do things like me, really releasing control is a huge healing portion of relationships with yourself, but also with other people. That's, I guess, all this relationship talk. I'm going to throw that in there. Okay, we're going to move on. Next thing, this was big. I'm so proud of myself because this year I really leaned into what does my body actually need? This is getting up leveled next year for sure because things are already happening, which I'm going on a tangent. Okay. Our energy bodies need maintenance support. Just like our physical bodies, right? We are active, we stretch, we brush our teeth, we wash our body. Like there's like this maintenance to take care of our physical body. There's maintenance to take care of our mindset, right? Like doing different readings, doing different puzzles, like doing different activities with your mind. Like we all know that the research shows that that helps keep your mind going. I'm not a doctor, but there's things we can do to help our mindset like continue its growth and stay fresh and young. Our energy bodies are the same way. And I learned this, I was told this, and shout out to Christina the channel. I was reminded of this because like I've known this, right? But it was like I had to hear it, and then I had to kind of explore like, well, what does this mean for me? And so there's all kinds of energy work. There's all kinds of things you can do to love on your energy body. But I really leaned on what does this mean for me? And this led me to signing up for some energy healing that I get every month. And this led me to do my daily energy work every morning and every night. And this one thing has been probably one of the biggest tools and like one of the biggest things that has helped me in my healing journey. So, I receive energy healing. I do my own energy healing. Like clearing energy is like huge for me. I do that a lot throughout the day. I do this through the breath. I do this just with my hands. Sometimes I have crystals, just with intention, water. There's so many ways I do it. But just understanding that everything is energy. And then, like I said, with all the relationships, you understand how energy works and how conditioning and energetic conditioning happens. And so clearing your energy every day and like just setting up your energy body, and like you can tune it to a frequency that you desire for each day or even at nighttime if you want. And there's so much good, like there's just so much that you can do that really just one, it's like it sets your frequency. So it's really going to set you up for what you're going to receive and attract that day, and also how you're going to respond, right? Like, what is your perspective going to be if you're down at this frequency of like, oh, I have to wake up and it's another day, I got to do this and I got to do this. Where if you take a couple minutes to set your frequency and clear your energy body to maybe setting it to gratitude, then you can take that time to shift, right? That energy is going to shift. Your mind might be a little bit stubborn, but the energy is going to shift, and allow yourself to receive that. That's another thing about energy work, is like, it's a daily thing. Like, if you do it daily, every day you're practicing receiving, whether it's from somebody else or yourself. Like, that's such a blessing. So see that? Like, I literally thought about the frequency of gratitude and my energy shifted. Like, I don't know if you can hear it. I think you can. I definitely felt it. So hopefully you can feel it. But that's the intention behind it. And that could be your energy work, is setting your intention and energetically feeling it and energetically stepping into it. But the more maintenance you do on your energy body, the more you can make shifts and transformations and manifest. Like, it happens just like that. And if you shift your energy body, your physical body, your mindset is like, oh, we're doing this. Okay. Like, it's one way to shift. A lot of people say, like, if it's that easy, why, like, why doesn't everyone do it? And it's like, it is a muscle. It's something that, like, you could step out of really easily, because we're conditioned to be at a different frequency, especially if you have these routines and tasks that you do all the time. And maybe you set the frequency before so many times through an emotion, through your mindset during that activity, it's going to be easy to step back into it. So that's why you do the energy work every day. You build that muscle. You have that maintenance going. Okay, so receiving energy work, doing your own energy work. There's like past life regressions you could do. There's just different, like, there's so many different things you could do for energy maintenance. I might do a whole podcast just on that, because that's a huge one. Okay. This is a big one. I think for a while I was triggered by people saying ego death. And so I was like really resistant of, like, we love the ego, and like, like really advocating, like, no, this isn't something like you want to get rid of. And then I had this realization this year that I'm like, oh, when people are saying ego death, what they're saying is like, it's a rebirth. Okay. So like, their ego has this rebirth of their role and how they're operating and how they're using their ego, like how it's working with the body and the soul. That's what people are saying when ego death. There is some things out there that it's very like anti-ego. I am not an advocate for that, because we are here in this form for a reason. We're not here to hate on our ego. So I'm still saying, like, the biggest thing to really help, like, one, with intuition. Like, a lot of people are like, ego has nothing to do with intuition. Ego has like one of the biggest roles in intuition, because, well, this like is a podcast about duality. It's the contrast. Okay. That's how, like, humans, that's how we first step into leaning in, like stepping into our intuition, hearing that intuitive voice or sensing that intuition is in contrast to your ego. That's like how I teach people about intuition, is tapping into what's your ego sound like? What does that kind of like fear, safety, control sound like? How does it feel? Is there a smell? Is there a texture? Like, you get really intimate with your ego and then say, okay, what else do you hear? And it might be very soft underneath that. But now you know this sound over here is not your intuition because you just said hello to your ego. Maybe you gave it some love, right? And so then over here, there's this soft, quiet, loving voice or feeling or sensing or knowing. And that's how you know it's your intuition, because your ego's over here all loud and proud. You've been surviving off of your ego for years. So having that contrast, loving our ego for doing what it is needed to do for years and years and years. And we've kind of like given it all the power, right? And learning about our intuition is really just loving on our ego. Stepping into your intuition is saying, thank you, ego, for everything you've done. I got it. I got this. I'm going to take the lead on this. So big thing again this year is like your ego will run if you let it run. You can like say, hey, we're staying back here for a little bit. Or, I mean, that metaphor, I don't know. I don't know about that metaphor, but your ego will take the power because it's been conditioned to do that. And it's very good at protecting and keeping us safe. And so just recognize the different voices. But the big lesson is like the more you can like lean into like what your ego's here to do and love and accept it and like be grateful for what your ego does, the more like you'll recognize it, the more you can just like accept that it's there, but you can still listen to something else. Okay. This next one is pretty vague. But it is everything is a choice. This came up in like the most obvious things for me. And there was a lot of emotions this year. I think this will kind of roll out into next year as to why like this year was so emotional for me and just like really hypersensitive. This year I was meant to feel everything. But anyway, everything is a choice. And I said everything. And this came down to like choosing how I wanted to experience things, how I wanted to feel, how I wanted to experience my feelings. I was getting really intense like body experiences from feeling things that like I would see on the TV. And I was really like dumbfounded by it. I was like, well, what is happening to me? And there was at one point, Amy was like, do you need to go see someone? Like, I don't know. Like, you seem okay, but maybe that's something you need. And I was like, no, I think I'm okay. But like, I was very sensitive. Like, and that's what I mean, like hypersensitive. It wasn't like, oh, I'm sensitive to that noise. It was like my whole body would just have these responses to things that like in the moment, it didn't make any sense. So I would watch things and my body would physically respond in ways that like weren't normal. And so at some point I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like, let's experiment with this. And I did, but then at some point I was also like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done experimenting. I've journaled all I can on this. I'm choosing to experience this differently now. And really just setting that intention. Then the knowledge dropped in. And then it was like, one, I took a break from like consuming anything. That was when I went on like a consumption, not consumption binge, but like the opposite of that. Whatever. That was when I really just stopped consuming. I could read a little bit, but even like it just depended on the book. But that's when all the knowledge dropped in. And that's when some of my psychic senses also turned on. So it was like, that was when I was like, oh, I can really just choose to experience something differently. And, you know, I don't know, like, I'm still exploring that because I don't know, like, there, like, and for my experience and my heart, like, I feel like there's no parameters on that, right? Like, you literally can choose anything. And so you know, it goes back to the thing, everything is a choice. How do you want to experience things? How do you want to feel? How do you want to show up? How do you want to remember this? How do you want to be present? It's all a choice. And I think with this, it's like, who are you choosing for? Is it love or fear? I think everything is a choice. It's just related to everything I just talked about. Okay, we're down to the last couple, but let's see. This one is hitting home right now. I'm getting ready to pull some cards too, but children are our greatest teachers. I don't even know if that's really what the big lesson is, but I think that was a note for me to talk about some of my big lessons through being a parent, having young kids, having these knowings about the kids. Because my healing started when it started before I became a parent, but it really took off with parenting, reparenting, inner child work. That really, once you dive into that, that really just kind of takes you on a journey. And so to me, the kids have brought me so much knowledge and experience. And there's just this trust I have with children that like whatever they are showing me, whatever they are reflecting to me, it's worth looking at. It's worth diving into. My kids are like some of my greatest, most beautiful mirrors. And it's really like leaning into that as the experience, because it can be really triggering. It can be really like, I don't know what's happening. Like it can get really emotional. You can really start to have these habits that might not be healthy, that might not feel great. That's when relationships kind of like, you set the tone with relationships. And so, yeah, like having these experiences with the kids and really just stepping back and saying like, okay, I see this option. This comes back to everything as a choice, because I see this option, I see this approach, I see how I like my automatic response, like where I'm conditioned. And then it was like, I see this other way that's new and uncomfortable, but it feels right. And if you're close to me, you might like know this on a deeper understanding, know this on a deeper level, because it really is like the children that are coming in, the children that are here, and my children are really calling us to do things differently, set up new systems, set up new ways of doing things, of operating family systems. It's amazing. So if you have children in your life, if you want children in your life, know that that's the dynamic right now. Like the children are bringing the knowledge. We got to open up and really tune in. Like our intuition is going to connect with their higher selves. If you're a parent, if you're a caretaker, if you're around kids, like tune in to your intuition when you're around kids, because their higher selves are doing lots of work, are doing tons of work with us. So yeah, that can be a podcast episode too. Okay. This last one is probably like the biggest one for me, because I took this and I ran with it all year long, and it's been a pillar of my business now. So understanding energy and how it operates is the most powerful way to transform. And what I mean by the most powerful is it's like potent. It's like when people think about like manifestation, it's like, oh, you're going to manifest that so quick. It's like energetic transformation is, you're so done with the way things are playing out that you're ready to change like that. It's very manifesting generator vibes where it's like, oh, we're ready to change. We're going to change directions like tomorrow. It all comes down to choice. But no, the energetic transformation is something that I have built into two of my offerings now. And this really comes down to this setting intention, setting your frequency, understanding how energy operates is going to allow you to like see what's right in front of you. It's going to allow you to see like what energy you're putting out, what you're pulling in, what you're settling with. And yeah, just if you approach something, like I said before, was when your energy body shifts, when you take a energy transformation, your physical body responds in a way that is going to support that. It's kind of like, oh yeah, we're doing this now. Like I can keep up with this. Let's do something different with my body today. The same with the mind, right? Like, oh, this feels different. And how can my music's playing again? How can maybe we can just turn it down here. Okay. Sorry about that. How can my way of thinking shift to this different feeling, like this different energy that I'm surrounding myself in, that I'm choosing to be in? So understanding energy and tapping into what you know about your energy, and then feeling into these different versions and how you're experiencing energy is really an efficient way to make changes. So I do this step-by-step process that it doesn't always happen like in linear form, but all the steps happen throughout a transformation. It's like a transformation cycle, but it's not linear. So I've figured out that these are the things that kind of happen before a transformation is considered like complete or fully transitioned. And you've alchemized everything to like rise above, right? To come out on the other side. And it's very Phoenix vibes. I like that. But I have this in my guide, my workbook that I have, and we set up this portal energy for this to happen in my membership, which is opening soon. So that is what I have for my lessons of 2022. I feel like it was a lot, but I hope there's some value in this and you find that maybe you had some similar lessons. I would love to hear like what some of your big takeaways were, or if you resonated with any of these, because, you know, a lot of them had to do with relationships, and that was the energy of the year. So yeah. Last thing is my membership is opening soon. I know I had a December open date, but it's going to be closer to January now. Obviously, I'm recording this on December 28th. So we're doing a quick pivot and shift with the branding, believe it or not. I woke up one day and said, this is my choice, that I'm gonna change this. So a little bit delayed, but it's definitely going to be worth it. There's going to be so many resources in there right away, and I'm hoping to offer a sweet deal to sign up. So quite a few of you jump in and we get started with this abundant and transformational energy. Okay, I think that's it. I did pull a card. I'm not going to go into it too much. Let's see what it is, I guess. Oh, Nautical Star, number 8. I'm going to see what else I pulled. Okay, yeah. We also have the Abyss, number 9, and Amazon. These are like Earth mandala cards. They're very beautiful. These happen to all be blue purples for those listening on the podcast. We have 8, 9, and 35. And what I'm like getting from this is really like choosing the path, like there's a choice that you can make, and it's like choosing which direction you want to go. Like you're going to be divinely guided to whatever it is that you desire, but it's a matter of choosing and trusting that the support's going to be there. Um, there's like this, it's kind of seems like a jump, like a leap of faith where it's dark. You don't know what's down there. Like there's this unknown that might happen, and they're saying like there's so much fruition down there. There's so much on the other side of that trust. So tapping into like, where is that trust lacking, and how can you further like find that support right now and know that that support's going to be there on the other side. Like that nautical star is like really standing out for me of giving you that support that you need and like to guide you even if you don't know what's coming next. Okay. Well, that's it, I guess. And I hope you all have had wonderful holiday time and looking forward to the new year. And yeah. Okay. I will talk to you all next time on the Intuition Playground.